All right, check this out. The NBA and the NBPA mourn the horrific loss of life in Israel and condemn these acts of terrorism. We pray for Israel and pray for peace in the entire region. There have been about 150 of these types of statements made in the last several weeks, according to a list compiled by Jeffrey Sonnenfeld of Yale University, comprising of corporations that have spoken out either to condemn Hamas and anti-Semitism or to express solidarity and support for Israel. My question is, why this trend for corporations to speak out on social, cultural, in this case, geopolitical events that they really have nothing to do with? Is it helpful? Is it distracting? What's the goal? What are they trying to accomplish? The business of business is business. A paraphrase from economist Milton Friedman's 1970 New York Times article that eventually became known as the Friedman Doctrine, the idea that the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. Michael Jordan's famous offhanded quip, "Republicans buy sneakers too," perhaps best exemplified the conventional wisdom that celebrities and corporations were better off staying apolitical to appeal to the broadest market possible. But then came consumer awareness of what corporations were actually doing behind the scenes to workers, to the environment, their infiltration of the government vis-a-vis billions of dollars in lobbying, and then social media just blew the lid off the whole thing. Ideas and thoughts that were once geographically constrained can now spread like wildfire on the internet, and businesses were forced to adapt.
On Wednesday, October 2nd, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer.
First came marketing campaigns that highlighted a company's support of widely desirable and uncontroversial goals like curing cancer. Very safe and unoffensive. Nobody likes cancer, except maybe Big Pharma. Then came efforts to tackle more complex issues like sweatshop labor or blatant pollution of the ocean vis-a-vis oil spills and such. Meaning still mostly surface-level marketing campaigns that make it sound like they aren't treating employees like slaves and polluting the environment, while for the most part, continuing to treat people like slaves and polluting the environment. Fast forward to today, companies are weighing in on very divisive wedge issues like gun control, abortion rights, social justice, immigration, and now they are even weighing in on the most fraught geopolitical conflict of our time.
It used to be that we just said, as long as you don't break the law, everything's fine, you can do whatever you like. But today, we're a little bit more ambitious, we're expecting a little bit more of business, and we're increasingly expecting that business should step in and solve bigger social and environmental problems.
This is Professor Allison Taylor from the New York University Stern School of Business, my alma mater, where she teaches corporate responsibility and business ethics.
I think we've got these really different ideas of power and authority. We're seeing all these power shifts going on inside organizations. We're seeing these things over questions like remote work, over issues like Me Too, over Black Lives Matter.
It's human nature. If we must work, then at the very least, we want to feel good about our place of work. Similarly, as consumers, it's natural to want our purchases, especially those that other people can see, clothes, cars, the coffee in our hand, to be from brands that we align with because it is kind of an extension of us.
I don't know about you, but I very often find myself in the supermarket wondering, should I buy local food, organic food, fair trade food? And so we've got all these concerns.
The question is, for a company, especially one that is public, is this kind of activism a good thing as it relates to shareholder value? After all, that is what's most important.
Go woke, go broke. Go woke, go broke.
Go woke, go broke.
Go woke, go broke.
Go woke, go broke.
Go woke, go broke. Which was certainly the case with Anheuser-Busch, who perhaps permanently tarnished one of their flagship brands, Bud Light, as backlash erupted when the brand decided to weigh in on trans rights in a partnership deal with social media influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Sales are down almost 30% in the 4 weeks ending October 21st compared to the same period a year ago. AB InBev, Bud Light's parent corporation, recently reported a staggering 13.5% decline in U.S. revenue in the third quarter. But for other companies like Nike, taking a stand has really worked out well for their bottom line. In the year after their stand for something, even if it means sacrifice everything ad with Colin Kaepernick in 2018 in protest of police brutality, the company claimed $163 million in earned media, a $6 billion brand value increase, and a 31% boost in sales.
From an investor point of view, if we measure these factors in the right way, they will be correlated with shareholder value over the long term. So as far as investors are concerned, this is another way to make more money, not necessarily a reflection of these kind of wider ethical concerns that employees might have.
According to a study published in 2020, well-aligned activism can strengthen relationships with customers and employees. Poorly aligned activism, alternatively, may result in customer boycotts or employee disengagement, all of which can impact the stock price. The study reported on average, if the activism didn't align with a company's primary stakeholders, stock values decreased by more than 2%, and if the move aligned with stakeholders, stock price increased by almost 1%. So it looks like if done correctly, corporate activism doesn't actually violate the Friedman Doctrine at all. In fact, it's an additional lever that executives can pull to try to increase their firm's shareholder value. But I think the more important question that we as a society need to ask is whether corporate activism makes a difference when it comes to impacting environmental, social, or political change.
In 2014, right, there were all these horrible police killings all the time in the US. There was a police killing of a teenager in Ferguson, Missouri. This was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. Most companies would not touch this with a barge pole. They were not out there protesting. This was seen as too controversial, too upsetting, too polarized. Why would businesses get involved in anything so depressing? Fast forward to 2021, and a lot of CEOs gave public statements on the George Floyd murder verdict.
So if historically businesses engage in activism reactively rather than proactively, adopting activist stances only when there is a clear groundswell of public opinion or when a movement has reached a tipping point where silence or neutrality might be perceived negatively, it does beg the question. Why do we even care? Could it be actually a bad thing for consumers, for employees, for regular people? After all, Target was famously LGBTQ friendly until they weren't. And then were again. Until, once again, they weren't. Seems to me like companies almost always choose the most financially expedient path and aren't actually genuine about the cause they proclaim to care about at all. So why get upset about it either way? Which brings us back to Israel-Palestine. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the segment, since the October 7th attack on Israel, there have been about 150 companies that have spoken out, either to condemn Hamas and anti-Semitism or express solidarity and support for Israel. Now, do they actually care about the plight of the Jewish people? I think doubtful. Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, Senior Associate Dean for Leadership Studies at the Yale School of Management, said in an interview with the Washington Post, quote, "One factor simplifying corporate public relations calculus in this situation is that not a single one of these companies is doing a dollar of business in Gaza."
Part of the tragedy of the Palestinians is that they have essentially no international support for a good reason. They don't have wealth, they don't have power, so they don't have rights.
And there's your answer, crystal clear. In a recent LinkedIn post, Volkswagen CEO stated, quote, "The recent attacks on Israel were shocking and horrifying. Our thoughts are with the people of Israel who are facing terror and violence, and our colleagues who have families impacted by this tragedy. While our production and operations in Israel have so far not been affected, we are continually checking in on our team members in Israel and monitoring the situation." There's that little bit of business consideration that we just talked about. He continues, Volkswagen Group is a proud partner of the Anti-Defamation League, the leading anti-hate organization in the world. Its timeless mission is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. Well said, but I don't think anybody watching this needs to be reminded that there was a time in the not too distant past when Volkswagen's business practices were not so kind to the Jewish people. Whether it be supplying cars to the Nazi regime, or actually operating 4 concentration camps and 8 forced labor camps in their manufacturing supply chain. Why do they do such things? Was it because they loved Nazism and hated Jews? Maybe a few of them did, but in general, the company was probably just doing what was financially expedient at the time. I'm confident if the day comes when Palestine is an economic and political powerhouse, you better believe which side businesses will be on. So to me, and this is me giving you my opinion, and I encourage you to form yours, but this kind of anthropomorphization of business whereby brands and companies are an extension of us as an individual is actually very toxic for society. Like, think about it. Why should we imbue brands with a meaning far beyond their modus operandi, which is just making money? Who does that actually serve? I would venture to say not you, not me, not us. I'm going to end with Professor Taylor's recent and quite provocative LinkedIn post. Quote, "I have no comments to make on Israel-Palestine other than to say it is an utter tragedy. But this story about tensions rising between regional branches of McDonald's over support for Israel and Gaza, respectively, is right in my wheelhouse and a powerful case study of how much of a mess we are in over corporations and their values. When I express concerns about companies taking political stances, people usually shrug and say there is no other option today. But this is where it ends up. Employees and customers of a global multinational pushing a burger chain, which ought to be focused on the climate impact of its core product, to take stands on an overwhelmingly complex conflict. This is insane, and it ends nowhere good. What's better advice? Clean up your own mess. Treat workers with dignity and respect. Focus on your business. Stop overpromising on intractable problems. You aren't a democracy, and your stakeholders aren't the electorate. That's it for me this week. What are your thoughts about CEO and corporate activism? Is it something that you care about as an employee or as a consumer? Also, if you found this segment to be helpful, you can support my work by going over and subscribing to my YouTube channel, 5149 with James Lee. Link will be in the description below. Your support would mean a lot to me. Of course, keep on tuning into Breaking Points, and thank you for your time today.